So I am Dr. Erin Fisher. I teach psychology here at Rock Valley. I've been here for over 20 years. I was one of 3 or 4 to first teach online here when we first started experimenting with it. There were just a few of us. And we actually traveled down to the University of Illinois before they had their what is now known as their Illinois Online Network training system. And we were among the very first faculty in the state of Illinois to explore online learning, talk about online learning, set up what we would consider to be sort of the standards of what would make a good online class. And so I've been teaching online really since the late 90s then, and I find every semester I learn something new and I add something, take something away. The needs of the students have changed over the years. What they're looking for in an online class has changed over the years. And to me, what makes a good instructor for online is someone who recognizes that and is keeping up with all of that and is willing to make changes to his or her pedagogy as necessary. Recently, Rock Valley has done so much to improve online teaching and online learning, not just from what we're able to do as instructors, but what the students can do. They've added components to our online systems. They've added in the library lots and lots and lots of documentaries that students can stream right from their computers at home, which was always a really big barrier. I show lots of interesting films and documentaries in my classes, and I've never been able to do that for my online students until recently. YouTube, of course, has clips, but there are full documentaries that I can now assign my students to watch. So they've made big strides. Most recently, they've created an instructional designer position and a media position, and they've given us space to record and training, additional training, which many of us needed. Even those of us who've been doing it for a long time can always use a refresher. So they've made unbelievable efforts to create the best type of online learning that they can. When I think about what students struggle with in the transition from a traditional face-to-face learning experience to an online experience is first and foremost organization. This is not in any way meant to be a dig at students, because I'm exactly the same way. I need constant reminders of what's happening and what's due. And in our regular classes, we often walk in and say, don't forget, this week this is due, or on Wednesday we're having this exam, or we're doing this, or hey, does anybody have any questions about anything? And that's a lot harder to do in an online course because you either are not doing it or you're bombarding them with emails and announcements, which makes them feel overwhelmed by text and just stuff. So I think that that's the first thing that they struggle with. And so sometimes it's helpful to just remind them that there are ways to get around that. Create a calendar for yourself or set aside certain days for each class to log into. I tell my students, for example, that hey, if we were meeting face-to-face, we'd be meeting Monday and Wednesday. So Monday and Wednesday, log in for a little while, carve out some time, and get out your notebook and take notes just like you would in class. So that's the first thing. I think the other thing is a sense of isolation. Even if students don't talk in class, even if you're a quiet student, you still feel that you're in a class, and there's benefit from that. So the professor has to work a little extra hard to create a feeling of, I see you, right? Because in the classroom, one of the things, at least I know that I do, is I really try to connect with every student in some way, at least once a week. Eye contact, asking them about their life and cataloging that so that next week I can say, hey, how did that thing go over the weekend? That's so hard to do in an online class. But you have to. You have to find a way to make each student feel seen and part of something. For students who are concerned about being successful in an online class, first I want to say, you've got this. You've got this. And to remember that everyone in your class feels exactly the same way that you do. And in many cases, your professor is just as worried about how things are going to go as you are. So first and foremost, don't think less of yourself because you're worried. Second of all, make connections. Connect with your professor answer his or her emails, respond, participate in the discussion. But if there is an opportunity, if your professor, for example, says, I'm happy to coordinate study groups or groups for you guys, which I offer a lot, and unfortunately many students don't take me up on it. The ones that do almost always do better in the class, and they report greater levels of satisfaction at the end of the semester. So just remember that in a regular classroom, the onus for sort of bringing everyone together is on the professor, and we're fine with that. That's what we love to do. In an online course, some of that onus is transferred to the student, and so you sort of have to own up to that right away, and you have to say, okay, I have more of a role to play right now in feeling connected to this class than I normally do. So what can I do in order to do that? And that is scheduling those times to log in, communicating with other students, making the effort to reach out. That's what I would recommend. I think some of the misconceptions that students have in an online course is that I think what we see are actually two sort of extremes. The one is that it's just a correspondence course, and they can just put in the bare minimum and look up all the answers on Google when they're taking the exam, and so that it's going to be easier. That's the first misconception, and that's all a mistake. The second misconception is the other end, is that it's going to reproduce the face-to-face experience exactly. It cannot. And I think that the longer that we try to reproduce exactly that experience, the more disappointed we've become. The truth is that it is a mixture of what you might think of as a traditional correspondence course. You have to read a lot, you're going to do a lot more writing, but there are elements of engagement that you have to do. So I would say in terms of those are really common misconceptions that students would benefit from examining if that's what they think that it's going to be like, and then saying, oh, okay, I might be wrong, and I need to sort of gear myself up for maybe a kind of experience I've never had before. So to stay motivated with your course, I would say set small goals. We know from lots of research in psychology and education that setting small goals helps keep you motivated. So instead of saying, I'm going to get an A in this course, that's great. How about you set a goal for yourself that I'm going to get a perfect on this first assignment, or a B on this first assignment, and then an A on the first exam. Because when you feel like you've met these little goals, you feel, oh, look what I'm capable of. And don't set yourself up for failure, meaning have a realistic expectation of what you're capable of. And that way you won't find yourself sort of ripping on yourself, which is a huge demotivator, because, if you think that nothing that you do is going to make a difference, it probably won't. You have to really believe that what you're going to do is make a difference. So I would say set small goals. Now, as far as the mental health goes, I think we're all struggling a little bit. This is all new terrain for us. We're used to having more social contact, and we don't realize until that social contact is gone how much that buoys us throughout our day. So if you can't socialize in the traditional way with your friends, find an alternative way to socialize with your friends. If you find yourself getting bogged down by feelings of negativity and feeling overwhelmed, reach out to your professor. We have resources here at the college for just that, and the faculty have been informed on how to make sure that we can link you up with the resources that you need. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the work itself in that course, or you're feeling really lost, reach out again. Faculty would much rather you come to us beforehand and say, holy cow, I am so overwhelmed right now, like I have so much stuff and I can't keep it straight, than after something is due and you've missed a whole bunch, and then come and say, well, I just couldn't do it. Talk to us ahead of time. Most of us are really more flexible than you think and are willing to work with you in your situation. We just have to know about it in advance. But just make sure that you're keeping your support structure intact. And if it ever feels like that's crumbling, recognize it and talk to someone who can maybe help fortify that structure. So I was thinking the other day about this fall semester. Once we knew for sure that most of our classes would be online, or at least the lecture-based classes would be online. And for about a week there, I felt kind of frozen. Now, I've been teaching online a long time, so for me, prepping for an online course is not that big of a deal. But to do so many, right? Because mine is normally half and half face-to-face, half online. I felt frozen, like almost like I was in concrete. I don't even know what to do. What do I do to make this worthwhile for my students? And what I reminded myself is this is new territory for everybody. So I'm going to look at this as an experience, and I'm going to see what I can get out of it and go in not expecting things to go exactly as I imagined them, but fully expecting things to be crazier than I could imagine or more different than I could have imagined, and I'm going to go with it. And I'm going to ask my students to do the same.